All right, it is 1 minute past, so let's get going. So thank you everybody for joining today's coffee break from us here at Scomathon, where today I'm really excited that we're talking about integrating the security monitoring MP into Microsoft Sentinel. All will be revealed as we go through the webinar as to how these two worlds kind of intersect with each other and what the value of doing so is. So let's dig in. But before we do, if I could just get you all to go to the link at the bottom of the screen here, so scomathon.com/Slack. You can join all of us, all of our guests and hosts today to continue the conversation on Slack. If there are any questions that come to mind, we'll be taking them from Slack there. And of course, if anything comes to mind after the event, you're welcome to ask them there as well. So, let's dig in. So today's panel is made up of myself. I'm Bruce Cullen. I'm the Director of Products here at Cookdown. You're probably very used to hearing me witter on. But luckily, there are some exciting guests who are joining me today, starting with Nathan Gow. Hello, Nathan. How are you?
Sorry, I got to unmute myself. I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Good, I'm all right. So you are a veteran to Scomathon. You've been with us multiple times before. You're a senior consultant at Microsoft. Let's hear a bit about you.
Actually, I'm not a senior consultant anymore, but we title changed recently as I changed roles. I'm actually a senior technical specialist. But I've been with Microsoft for a little over 7 years now, and came in as a Scom PFE, did that for about 4 years, switched to the cybersecurity team at MCS, did that for 3 years, and I'm now doing technical sales, focusing on our security products within Azure, so Defender, Sentinel, those types of things. That's the work overview. I live in the Cleveland area, Midwest guy from, I guess, for really my whole life, live in the Cleveland area currently. That's about it.
Perfect. Sounds good. It's great to have you back with us today. We're also joined by Rod Trent. Hello, Rod.
Good day, Bruce. How are you? And how hope everyone that tuned in is doing, they're safe and happy and enjoying the upcoming holiday season.
Yes.
The reason why I mentioned the holiday season, because Bruce, if everybody can see your screen there, it is absolutely Christmassy. I think that's absolutely wonderful. It's almost Hallmarkish, if I could use that as a term.
Yes. Yeah. It translates. This is my wife's doing. As far as I'm concerned, Christmas doesn't start till the 1st of December. But here we go. I've been overruled.
Well, that's what comes with families, right? Most generally.
Yes.
So I'm a senior cloud security advocate at Microsoft. That's a fancy title for just literally meaning that I advocate for specific products or product areas within Microsoft, whether that's through content or learning or feedback directly to the product groups. Obviously, based on our topic today, my area of focus is cybersecurity, security, but primarily Microsoft Sentinel. I've been with Microsoft a little over 3 years and have spent, I was just thinking about this yesterday. I don't know why it just hit me. I've every single day for the past 2 years, as of November, the 1st of November, then I've worked with Microsoft Sentinel every single day. I was thinking, I don't know if that's an anniversary I should, kind of celebrate, but at the same time, I absolutely love it. I'm from very near Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States, for anyone that's familiar with that.
Awesome. Well, maybe today we can celebrate your Sentinel anniversary together on this webinar. So our final guest for today is Cameron Fuller. You're no stranger to Scomathon. Cameron, you've been with us multiple times, and it's great to have you back with us.
I appreciate it. I'm really appreciative of the fact you all are willing to put this together for us and have the opportunity to be able to even talk about this concept. That we'll explain where it came from, but this is directly related to Scomathon, so I'm really excited for today's conversation. For background, for those folks that may not know me, so I'm an old school Scom guy, wrote on or co-authored on several of the Unleashed books on the topic, still work in this space on a regular basis, and I am actually located in North Texas, close to Oklahoma now.
You literally wrote the book on Scom. And it's great to have you back with us for another one. This is a really interesting topic, and as you'll find out over the course of today's webinar, the background is really relevant to Scomathon. Great. All right, so let's dig in.
Absolutely.
So I guess this is pretty much where I hand over to you, Cameron, to take us through what we're going to be hearing about today.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So first and foremost is for those who attended Scomathon, this concept was actually born at Scomathon. So behind the scenes, what was happening was Nathan was presenting on his security management pack, and I immediately saw, I was like, oh my gosh, we need this data in Sentinel. So I didn't even let him finish his presentation. Feel free to come off mute here, Nathan, but
I'm quite sure you let me start my presentation.
Yeah, I was already on Nathan going, oh my gosh, and telling him something I'm sure he already knew. I think we talked about it since then. He knew how valuable this data would be, but immediately I started reaching out to Nathan and saying, hey, we got to get this into Sentinel. So, and what I realized pretty quickly thereafter is he and I started coordinating and talking through how we would go about this is I needed somebody with a stronger degree of chops in Azure Sentinel than I possessed. So I reached out to Rod, and he joined us as well, and the three of us have been kind of working through this process for how do we integrate this, and again, just having this born from Scomathon was such a cool thing, and being able to actually get on this webinar and talk through it again kind of brings it all full circle. So I'm extremely happy for this.
So I hate to do this, but I do have to correct everyone. It is Microsoft Sentinel now, and not Azure Sentinel. We finally finalized our latest product rebranding. Which
don't worry, it'll be back to Azure Sentinel here.
Yeah, most likely. We'll just call it Rod Sentinel. Maybe that's part of the celebration.
I was wondering if you picked that up. The downside of using an older iteration of the slides there, clearly.
But a good point out, though. So, Rod, just give us really quick, and I know we'll get into it more later. Why did they rebrand it to Microsoft Sentinel, or was it just to confuse us?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about this when I kind of give you a brief overview for those that aren't aware what Sentinel is. The reason for the rebranding, obviously, we started this rebranding effort at the end of last fiscal, which to Microsoft folks is like June, July, something like that. We started that rebranding in an effort to show our customers that we're trying to centralize our security platforms. A lot of customer angst has come from having literally a security console for every little thing that we have out there, whether it's Office 365 or MCAS or whatever it happens to be. So we put forth the mighty effort to start to centralize that stuff into that security.microsoft.com console. So you'll see most things are there now. And from that effort, we started rebranding those M365 security products as Defender for whatever it is, Defender for identity, Defender for endpoint. But we had a few remaining lingering platforms, right? So one of those was Azure Security Center. The other was Azure Sentinel, MCAS as well, which we recently renamed as well. But the primary reason for those is that when you look at Azure Security Center, which is now Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and Azure Sentinel, which is Microsoft Sentinel, it's a platform that allows you to connect anything from anywhere. It's not just an Azure solution. It's housed in Azure, but it's not a solution designed specifically for Azure services and components. You can literally connect anything from anywhere, whether it happens to be AWS, Google Cloud, any other crazy cloud name you want to come up with, or even on-prem, right? On-prem services, applications, and devices. So it absolutely makes sense. Instead of Azure Security Center, it's now Microsoft Defender for Cloud. You can see we're trying to be a little bit more agnostic because we do support all of the assets of our customers' environments.
Cool. I'm just going to throw a quick shout out there to my folks from the Midwest Management Summit. I actually made a presentation now several years ago where I effectively almost predicted the birth of Sentinel. So I find it really funny to look back at this. It was a Game of Thrones focused presentation where we basically started figuring out all the different places that security was at and where it belonged at. So I didn't exactly predict Sentinel, but it was pretty dang close. So I'm extremely excited by this solution. It makes a whole lot of sense. So Nathan, talk to us about the security monitoring management pack, because this isn't something new. I mean, this is something you already had way before we started talking about this at Scomathon, right?
Yeah, so that was actually, the idea came around in 2015. I was at a technical conference. We called it Tech Ready back in the day. It was just kind of a internal technical training conference that all of the technology people within Microsoft have to go to every couple of years. It was my first one joining the company. They had this nice panel of things you're supposed to do, and I looked at all the stuff they wanted me to attend. I didn't really want to go to any of it, so I went to all the security courses instead. Was struck in a presentation by somebody, I don't really remember who at this point, but they were going through basically all the things the bad guys were doing that the DART team was finding was in the logs, visible in the logs, and no one noticed, right? Now me being a Scom guy, I'm like, well, Scom's really good at parsing logs. It's really good at parsing logs. That's what it was made to do, right? So that kind of kicked off the idea, like, I wonder if I could actually start looking for some of this stuff. So I got back from Ready. First thing I did was download Mimikatz into my lab and just try to do a pass the hash simulation in my lab, comb through the log files and see what was there. Which led to my first blog post on it, so detecting certain flavors of pass the hash. I could basically catch the credential swap when you using Mimikatz. At least there's a unique signature there. And started kind of doing like, oh, how do you detect this? How do you detect that? And I think I released, I want to release the first version in 2016. It was an unsealed version. Sealed it up and released my first sealed version of it in 2017. And I've been kind of supporting it ever since as a sealed solution for Scom which it really has kind of turned more into kind of a best practices tool, I would say. I mean, it does a lot of detection of like legacy protocols and helps the security teams kind of see what the operations teams are doing, that type of thing. Although there's definitely security nuggets in there that are worthwhile information that can be detected and alerted on, obviously.
So give us just a couple more examples other than ones that are on here. What other things do you detect that would be relevant for a SIEM or a SOAR type solution like us?
So obviously you can see what I've got in there, right? We'll talk about syslog and whatnot. But what you're seeing, at least in the screenshots, is kind of stuff that the bad guys might be doing. But I'm looking at other things, clearing the event logs, monitoring memberships of key groups, alerting against special group logons. Let's see. I think I said clearing logs. That was kind of a big one. GPO changes. All sorts of various things that an attacker may or may not want to do, depending on what they're trying to do. I try to get away from events that are common, right? I'm not going to alert every time somebody joins a computer to the network or something like that. But ideally, focusing on things that really shouldn't be happening all that often, and then letting the security teams, in theory, be able to kind of validate that yeah, this was legit, that kind of thing. So I think that covers it for the most part. There are a few other things I'd love to do, but Scom isn't really the best analytics tool, and Sentinel, right? So it doesn't do the correlation piece very well at all. And so that's really where I think you start seeing the value of this, is that we could actually start correlating some of that stuff in ways that Scom could never do.
And for those folks that already have Scom and may not have Sentinel as an example, if they haven't seen this management pack, this is something, and we have a link at the end of the presentation. So this is free for download, integratable into current Scom environments and things like that. Correct, Nathan?
Mm-hmm. Yep. As a matter of fact, I designed it intentionally so if you're using my existing security monitoring solution, it's pretty much designed so that you'll have to pop that out because they won't run side by side, but just make a couple of changes to your overrides file and just bring that right back in, and everything just continues as all your overrides carry over, all your customizations carry over. So it's designed you can literally just upgrade right to this without maybe more than 10-20 minutes effort. So
very nice. So on to you, Rod. So talk us through, what is Microsoft Sentinel? What are I mentioned SIEM and SOAR and things like that. What are we talking about here, man?
Yeah, so I just want to kind of get a brief overview. I don't want to spend a lot of time here. Obviously, since I've worked with this product for so long, I could talk days and days and days and just go on and on and on, and usually do, but I'll try to check myself here. But just for those that aren't familiar, aren't aware of what this is most folks are probably already familiar with a tool like Microsoft Sentinel, in that this is a security information event management system tool, security tool, right? That SIEM, some people call them SIEMs, some people call them SIMs. Really doesn't matter as long as you use it. As long as you use one, we don't care what you call it. But it's the same type of tool, right? So it's at its base, essentially a log aggregator. We're taking log files just like Scom does. We're taking log files literally from everywhere, every source, and ingesting them into Azure, into a log analytics workspace, which is what Microsoft Sentinel sits on top of, whether that's on premises, whether that's in another cloud like AWS or GCP or whatever cloud it happens to be, whether that's our own Microsoft first-party services like Office 365, or our Defender products, or even Intune or Endpoint Manager, all of those, like wherever a log file exists, we should, this type of tool, be able to get that to the source, to this log analytics workspace, so that we can analyze it specifically for security occurrences or security events in those devices, applications, services, and what have you, from wherever they exist within our environment. The beauty and the difference here, and that's where I really kind of want to hover for just a second, instead of just giving you the whole 30-second tour of what Microsoft Sentinel is. I want just the differences between Sentinel and those other tools that you're probably familiar with, like Splunk is a good example, Logarithm, QRadar has a SIEM that's used by a lot of folks. Just kind of focus on the differences between those and this, which really plays into our overall perspective here from this Scom management pack. Microsoft Sentinel uses the true cloud capability. Anyone that's familiar with things like Splunk, QRadar, those know that they have a cloud product. Splunk, for example, uses AWS. They don't own their own cloud, so they literally have to, they're kind of inhibited about the different types of features and things that they can produce for the customers. And then they also have to kind of pass along that cost. And as we start talking a little bit further, next slide or two here, we'll talk about cost, and that becomes a very important discussion. Anytime you're moving data from anywhere, it's going to cost something. Customers are concerned about the cost. So this true cloud component, right? So storage is an important component. Log Analytics Workspace, if you're familiar with how Azure works, this Log Analytics Workspace is literally just a stretchy bucket, right? You can fit as much data into it as you want, as little or as much, and it's literally use as little as much as you need, just pay as you go type of situation. So you don't have to call up your vendor tomorrow and say, we've got 1,000 new switches installed over the weekend, which means there's 1,000 new logs, we need storage for it, right? And your vendor's like, okay, let's renegotiate your contract. Microsoft Sentinel, because it uses and we own this cloud, if you have 1,000 new log files tomorrow, it just accommodates. You don't even have to tell it to do anything. It just accommodates that stuff. Retention, right? We can store data. We have Azure Data Explorer within Azure that Microsoft Sentinel can take advantage of, which I think when you set up a ADX cluster, it defaults to 99 years of storage. So there's a lot of compliance, a lot of companies and organizations with compliance situations where like, we need to store this for 7 years or more. You can do that automatically without having to build out this massive architecture on-prem or even asking your vendor to accommodate that. There's the compute resources. When you talk about these other tools, they all have their own kind of defined, very specific query language. That query language sometimes, depending on the massive amounts of data that you have to query against, can take sometimes literally hours to return results. Because we're using compute in the cloud, those results, and I've done this with customers before, we've taken their data set and their data set in the cloud, and we've ran their query and our query, and it's literally come back in seconds versus, an hour or 2 hours, sometimes like that. So it's very important, I think, a very important prospect, particularly for security. If you're a security analyst and you recognize that there might be some threat within your environment, might potentially be a threat, you are on the clock to determine where that exists, why it exists, and hopefully to be able to remediate. If you're having to spend 2 hours waiting for results to come back, you're kind of behind the 8 ball at the very beginning. Another couple things about Sentinel, because of this true cloud experience, we have some artificial intelligence, machine learning built into Sentinel, where it looks at those different data sources I talked about. We're pulling in those different logs, and it can tie an IP address in one area to an IP address in another area and tell you the entire story about behind that occurrence or that security event, instead of just forcing analysts to go hunt down their own alerts. Oh, does this match? Does this kind of fit? So it'll tell you the whole storyline. So from an efficiency standpoint, that's huge. Automation, this SOAR capability, I've got that listed on the screen there. If you're not familiar, that's security orchestration, automation, and remediation. That is automating some of those common tasks from a security perspective, right? Again, to build some really good efficiency around security. So you focus on those things that are most critical in your environment instead of those things that are kind of mundane, and we know how we're going to react to those every time, so let's just automate that. That's built into Microsoft Sentinel, whereas any other tool like Sentinel, it's an add-on and probably costs more. But I think one of the most in true key pieces, I think, of the differences, we at Microsoft, our customers use a lot of our services, right? So Office 365, our Defender products, any service or product that we present, they produce what we call indicators or threat indicators potentially, right? Those indicators are fed back into our Graph API, our security graph. That information is analyzed and modified and fed back into our security systems. Microsoft Sentinel absolutely takes advantage of that. So every time you open up the Microsoft Sentinel console, you absolutely have the most current threat intel, right? From all of our system, from that threat intelligence that we're feeding into the system. So you're always current, you're always most up to date. To me, from a security perspective, I don't want to have to wait 2 days for something like the old days when an AV signature file had to be released, right? I don't want to have to wait for that. This is a consistent and constant being fed into the system, so you're always up to date. So that's my short overview of Sentinel. If anyone is ever absolutely interested in hearing more, just reach out.
Awesome, thank you, Rod. So Nathan, let's shift gears and talk about, why does it make sense for us to be sending this data to Azure Sentinel? What's the logic to it, dude? And you're currently muted as a heads up.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think Rod probably answered most of that already. Obviously, Scom is limited as what it can and can't do, but it's really good at finding data. And in this case, what we've really done is effectively turn it into both a filter and a forwarder. So the security monitoring solution probably only alerts on, I think I've got maybe 100 or so, 100, 120, something like that, rules in there that generate alerts. Not a ton, right? But so, useful stuff from an alerting standpoint. But once you get into Sentinel, you can start doing correlation, which is, something that's really, really, really hard to do inside of Scom. The other big thing that we've done, obviously, you can see the syslog stuff is, we turned on syslog with that because this was a gap, right? Within this was just an actual gap, right? It's like, yes, there's syslog capability for Scom, but you had to stand up infrastructure or a syslog capability for Sentinel, sorry, but you had to stand up your own infrastructure and get all that set up on your on-prem environment, which takes time and effort. Where if you already have Scom, you just drop this in and it's on. So it's just kind of nice. Just point your syslog machines at Scom, and all the security facilities just get sent straight into the cloud. So the other thing that we can do, right, there's two different components, right? You've got events and alerts. Now, Scom is an event collection source for security events. Is really not that good, mainly just because of the overhead that it puts in the database, the data warehouse. It's something. Matter of fact, I actually turned off all of my event collection rules of the latest release of security monitoring because of some of the issues related to 2019 and UR3 and whatnot. Scom's not very good at it. The nice thing about this is that we can now forward that data directly into Sentinel without putting it into Scom, and that's what this that's a component that this solution has added. And that we're not actually writing this stuff into the database of the data warehouse, at least where the original solution, with the exception of obviously what the original solution was doing, right? But by default, we can send any event that we want into the cloud with just a simple unsealed management pack. So, I think by default, I'm setting 4624s, 4625s, and 4688s straight into the cloud. That's just kind of the bread and butter of this management pack. But as part of the solution, I released an unsealed management pack that basically sends all of the minimal Sentinel required events, right? And so just drop that in, and it immediately starts forwarding those in. They never touch the database. They never touch the data warehouse on your on-prem environment. They just go straight into log analytics. And the beauty of it is you get to decide what you want to send in. And since you're being charged by ingest, it's probably a better idea to filter that on-prem. Just send in what you need, as opposed to doing it the traditional way, which is sending everything, and then just having to deal with the costs associated with it. It goes straight into log analytics. So if you've got Azure Monitor and you want to work off of that, right, you can absolutely do that. Obviously, we're doing Sentinel in this particular case, but the same concept works with Azure Monitor as well. I'd say it becomes a very, very useful means of kind of deciding what you want to put into the cloud and saving you money while doing it.
Yeah, and to kind of add to that, I think I talked a little bit earlier about that cost discussion. As you can probably guess, working with this product as long as I have, Sentinel, I don't know. I've worked with over 200 customers, right? And every conversation I have a customer, once they see a demo of Microsoft Sentinel and they absolutely love it and they're salivating, wanting to get started, within that first 15, 20 minutes, the discussion turns to cost. And that's one of the key important pieces here. So when Cameron and Nathan approached me about this, I started doing some preliminary research to look into what kind of impact this is for our Microsoft customers, particularly from System Center and the Operations Manager perspective. And we have a large Operations Manager customer base where this would absolutely help and provide value, in that they're still kind of operating, primarily on-prem, right? So they got a Scom environment. They would love to be able to take advantage of these other security pieces, love to be able to take advantage of the cloud. But then when you start looking at it, and as Nathan mentioned there's a cost for ingest, right? I think it's, $2.53 or something for every gigabyte or something like that, on average. It depends on what data center that you're attributed to. But there is a cost, and when customers start looking at that, they're like, well, can you give me an estimated cost? That's kind of one of those difficult prospects, because we don't know exactly what it is that you want to send. You have to determine, do I want to send my Cisco Palo Alto logs? Do I have AWS? I don't know exactly what data is necessary. Historically, with these types of tools like Sentinel, customers have, because they're building out the architecture, because they maintain the infrastructure, they literally, I'll take an old server that's 10 years old, I'll stand it up for storage, right? So they'll maintain that, so they don't even know what the actual cost is, even though there is a cost. But when they start taking a look at sending stuff to the cloud, there is an actual cost. So they don't know exactly what they want to send. But in relation to how this management pack works, all of this processing is done on-prem, right? There's no data sent to the cloud until you tell it to send to the cloud, or you tell it what type of data that you want to send to the cloud, and exactly what it is. In the Microsoft Sentinel space, we have listened to customers. We have some capability for that, but that comes in response as this new Azure Monitor agent that we're going to replace the Log Analytics agent with eventually. I think it's April or August 2024, something like that. But that includes another agent, right? So that Arc agent has to be installed, and then there's another agent just to do this filtering that we're already doing with this management pack on-prem, right? Nobody wants to install two agents to get something done. As much as I hate to say that, in case any of the product group folks are listening to me, but that's just the case. And when you get right down to it, it's really just a server solution, right? We're only recommending doing this for servers. Some of our customers, particularly those in the OpsMan space, they would like to be able to still collect all of those log files, even from probably Windows workstations and things like that they're accumulating in OpsMan. And you can absolutely still do that, and you minimize the cost of that data that's being sent to the cloud because you're processing everything on-prem first.
Yep, makes a whole lot of sense. And it's really giving us this holistic view of, your on-prem plus your different cloud environments all together in Sentinel. And then you add to that the fact that, this is kind of part of what we really need for the Better Together story. Scom is a great monitoring product, does a whole lot of things. But if we can pull it together with Sentinel, we get a better together story that's even stronger. So Nathan, I know you've been supporting this management pack from the beginning. So what does this mean in terms of the future of the management pack? Both the standalone version that's just working within Scom and the one that's going to be integrating into Sentinel.
I guess it means I'm supporting 2 management packs now. So here's the reality. The management packs are almost identical. So I want to make that clear. If I make a change to one, it's going into the other, where applicable. Now, only major difference, right, is that there are some Sentinel specific items that have been written into this version. Just some custom data sources, that kind of thing. Some custom rules to do some of that additional forwarding that are off by default, and then enabled via overrides, that kind of thing. So, but for all intents and purposes, the solutions are the same. So if you've been using security monitoring and you want to go on-prem security monitoring for Sentinel, I mean, it's the same management pack. It's just pulling the one out, dropping the other one in, making a slight modification to your customizations files, and you're rolling. So from that aspect of things, it's the same thing. I try to keep it on a yearly cadence for updates. I will admit this is my baby, so it's going to be based on the amount of time I have to work on it when I'm not doing my other job that I get paid for, right? So so from that aspect of things, it's usually the way it works is the customer will come and say, hey, can you add this feature in there? And I'll if it's doable, I'll try to add that in and give it to them, that type of a thing. But I do try to keep the updates on just a yearly basis, just to kind of put that in perspective. So we're also talking to the Sentinel product team. This is something that Rod and I are kind of working on internally. Don't know what's going to come of that, but it is possible that this turns into a Sentinel solution, which, if that's the case, that does completely change this, because now it's Microsoft owned. Specifically, I can't make any promises in that area other than the fact that we're pushing that internally, and hopefully something happens. So yeah, it's not going anywhere, at least until I retire, which is probably at least 10 years out, I'm guessing. So and whatnot. But so yeah, it's not going anywhere for the time being. And there are other folks internally who have access to this. So if for whatever reason I'm no longer at Microsoft, it's quite possible that somebody else may want to pick it up and run with it. So I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. I guess where I'm going with that.
And we've put this up in a GitHub repo, so the code in essence is publicly available. This isn't anything that we're protecting code, right?
So technically, the sealed management pack, you have to do a little work to unseal that and get the code out of that. But yes, that is correct. I mean, that's actually available. You go to systemcenter.wiki, you can find it there because somebody's done it, and they catalog it all. So, but yeah.
Nice. Rod, anything you want to add with regards to this one before we move into demo?
Yeah, just kind of on the product side for Microsoft Sentinel, this is absolutely has piqued interest of several folks from the product team, so they are aware. We have officially submitted to be part of eventually an upcoming private preview for this. So if anyone listening is a Microsoft Sentinel customer and is part of that private preview program, you should probably expect that sometime after the first of the year. As is the case at Microsoft, I'm not sure how many are actually familiar with how this works. It's a ghost town toward the end of every year, so a lot of people are trying to close up shop. So like I said, it probably won't happen until probably first of the year, something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move over to demo here. So let me go ahead and transition, or attempt to transition. 1 second. Uh-oh. There we go. Hold on a minute. All right, Nathan, I am making you presenter. Let me know when you got that. You're ready to go?
Yep, I have it. Let's make sure it's sharing the right screen. You should be seeing my desktop, or the remote desktop. Yes.
Not
I have
yet.
not seen anything yet.
Yeah, maybe it's there. You
There
go.
we
There we
Yes,
go.
absolutely.
Okay. All right, so you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Good.
All right, so all right, I'm gonna switch into here, and I haven't been doing much in my lab lately, so I'm just gonna kind of zoom in and show you what I got going on here, right? So as you can see, just some general alerts that I went ahead and generated in Scom. It's all fairly straightforward. You can see that I've got a syslog test alert. As a matter of fact, why don't I do this just for fun? Let me switch to so this is, yeah, I don't care about updates. This is my root CA, which is normally an offline root CA. There is no Scom agent on it. So this is in a work group. It is not discovered in Scom and whatnot. I'm just going to go ahead and send a syslog alert into Scom so we can kind of see this. And so within the next shortly here, your Scom is gonna, there it is, okay, and so there's this log alert that just came from this machine. So if I zoom in, you can kind of see it came in as facility 4, severity 1, and whatnot, and it's just a test alert that I just generate using the PowerShell for syslog command off of this guy. Now, this machine is not in my Scom environment, and so that's kind of the beauty of the syslog component, right? And within a couple of minutes, it won't be there yet, but within a couple of minutes, this is going to pop into to Sentinel as well. So it's not an instant thing by any means. So I just kind of want to show you a little bit of how it works. But the way it's set up is any alert that comes from this on-prem security monitoring solution, the alert as well as the corresponding event, if there is one, which syslog doesn't create an event. But a corresponding Windows event, if there's a Windows event, will automatically get forwarded right into the cloud. And they'll show up in the alerts table inside of Sentinel, and they'll show up in the events table inside of Sentinel. We've also added some, let's see if I can remember what I called it. Yeah, there it is. So I'll zoom in and show you this. We've also added this enable Sentinel minimum collection management pack. This is just an unsealed management pack that I wrote that basically turns on forwarding rules for all of the event IDs that Sentinel says is at a minimum we need. So you don't have to put that in if you don't want to. But what that does is basically enables the forwarding of pretty much most of the critical security events in the background straight into Sentinel without any additional configuration or whatnot. Just shoots them right into that event table that we can write analytics rules to generate incidents off of or something along those lines. So it's kind of a really nice component. Now, one key thing to keep in mind: this is dependent on on connecting your environment to log analytics, and the reason being is there's an actual sealed management pack that you download when you're connecting to log analytics that has some write actions in it that I have to use in order to send this data in. So so the setup is a little bit it's fairly straightforward. You're basically going to have to connect to log analytics. You're going to have to synchronize your Scom servers, your Scom management servers with log analytics. So that data is going to go in regardless. And then you can drop the solution in, and you can drop in that enable Sentinel minimal collection rules. There's a solution on the Azure side, the alert solution or something like that you got to add on the Azure side. It's all documented up on my blog. And boom, you're done. You're forwarding this data in there automatically. If there is an on-prem alert, it's generated. If you have an on-prem WEF environment that you want to put in, and you don't want to add Sentinel's piece, you can use the WEF discovery that I've got built into this solution, right? And write your own custom collection rules to send this into Sentinel. Now, the one downside, I wouldn't say downside, but the right actions for sending this data into the cloud are not exposed via console. So if you want to start sending your own custom stuff, reach out to me. I can write it for you. It doesn't take long. But I've got instructions on my blog on how to do it too. Because basically you're going to need some write actions that you can't access via the Scom console. So it does require a little bit of XML knowledge. We're talking copy and paste though, and I've got instructions in my up in my blog on how to do that. But basically it forwards that all into the cloud. Now I'm going to switch here to Rod's Sentinel environment, and so you can kind of see what this looks like. So let's go ahead and run this guy and see if we've got our see if we've got our, oh, let me get rid of, oh no, that's running to today. No, it's not. Okay, let's switch my custom time range from 10th, 30, from the 10th and to the 30th. There we go. I'm having a tough time today, apparently. And it looks like I still haven't seen that syslog alert here yet, so it doesn't look like that's in there just yet. To make sure I did that right. Yep. Okay. So that's not quite there yet. Oh no, there it is. Or no, I'm okay. That's not in yet. So, but we can also turn around and you can take a look at event tables, right? So you can see what's going on in the background. I don't alert off of a 4625. I don't care about a logon failure. It's just too noisy, right? But as you can see, all of this data from that time range is coming into Sentinel. And you can see there's actually quite a bit of data that's been going into Sentinel in the background and whatnot when we were generating 4625 events. And you can do that with your 4624s as well. This will probably be a lot more well, just a lot more data in general that's going to get sent into the cloud. When this query decides to run. So yeah, and you can see, obviously you see stuff from today, right? You can see that this has been dropping off or been coming into the environment, and I've got 281 pages of 4624 events because that's a pretty common one that Sentinel needs, right? All this data is going into the cloud. It's going into the background. It doesn't show up in your Scom database, and that's the beauty of it. It just goes straight in there. I'd like to actually see if our yeah, it does not look like. Yep, I still don't see our syslog alert here. That's probably the one downside is it's not an instant real-time type scenario. It does take a few minutes for this stuff to kind of pop in, but once it's there,
yeah, just to add to that, just kind of add as a comparison, understand that this is a log aggregation system. What you've done here, Nathan, is actually a lot quicker than some of our first-party services, right? So Office 365, there's obviously a log aggregation SLA that we have in place. It's most generally going to hit from Office 365 to Sentinel or Log Analytics Workspace within a 12 to 15 minute period of time. So this is actually a lot quicker even than our first-party services. So.
Oh, sweet. But yeah, it does take a couple minutes. That's probably my own just kind of FYI, just be advised. But the data gets in there, and at that point we can write analytics rules and that kind of stuff to do fun stuff with it. And I think at this point, is there anything else, Cameron, you wanted to see? Otherwise, I think I got to transfer this to Rod.
Yeah, I'd say go ahead and transfer that over to Rod at this point in time.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to make you a presenter, and I should probably stop sharing my screen. All right, there you go, Rod.
All right, I'm waiting for that little notification to pop up. Seems to be a little bandwidth lag today, but that's okay. That's the nature of the beast, right? All right. So really, once you can see my screen, I think once we all can see it, most likely everyone can see it. So let's.
I can see your screen.
You can see it. Okay, I just can't. That's fine. This is really where I want to start, and from my side of things. Again, I'm the Microsoft Sentinel person. I have had experience with Scom long time ago, but it's been a long time since I've worked with it. So I'm the Microsoft Sentinel side of this. If you're familiar with how these types of tools work, right? There's queries that you can use, query languages that you can use to write queries to analyze that data from a custom perspective instead of just always using the things that Microsoft provides, which is the beauty behind this, because you can customize something like this tool 100% to the way that you work and also to your environment, because every customer's environment is absolutely going to be different, right? Depending on types of devices, services, applications that you need to be able to monitor. This is what we talked about a little bit earlier. This is that GitHub repository. In fact, there's a long link up here, but literally we've got it in a short link. If you go to Sentinel Hybrid, right, aka.ms/Sentinel Hybrid, and I think there's a link at one of the slides at the end of this presentation as well, with the same link, but it will take you directly here. We call this currently the on-prem security monitoring for Sentinel solution. Within here, we have some Microsoft Sentinel goodness, right? So first off, there's the Scom folder, which obviously is the management pack and all of those components that Nathan has talked about so far that you can deploy. Because of the way that this solution currently works, it sends data to both the alerts table and the events table. It sends the important or pertinent data, critical security information that we need in a rendered description field in a row. So we have to parse it out. So I built some parsers around that to actually parse out all of that information so we can actually correlate that data with things that we can use. Currently have some detections that we've created so far for things that we've identified on-prem through that Scom management pack that are important for us to be able to pull in, analyze within Sentinel to report on. One of those things, which I'll show you here in a second, is sort of a brute force attempt or brute force attempted attack against a system. I'll show you what that looks like. We have some analytics. We have an analytics rule for that. Also, and I'll show you here in a second, we also do have a workbook that's in preliminary stages, kind of started. Really want to build it out. But again, as we get further down the road with this, get more integrated with that private preview program for Sentinel, that's when we can kind of put some additional focus behind that, because like everybody, we're busy with our other jobs and stuff like that, but this is kind of going on as we go. This is the Microsoft Sentinel console. If you've never seen this before, it's you can do the oohs and ahs and say, oh, it's real nice and pretty. But what I do want to highlight here is that analytics rule that I showed you on our GitHub repository. We have a new capability within Microsoft Sentinel to set up repositories either in GitHub or other places to be able to automate the ingest of your own organization's analytics rules, your workbooks, whatever it happens to be. So this is going to be great for us as we get to this private preview program, because so we can actually use this GitHub repository and Sentinel can use it as a solution to automatically configure and set up Sentinel with the solution here eventually. But this analytics rule that we have in here, it's taking my typing here. Yep. Just going to filter by this. This is the one that we're going to take a look at just to show you what this looks like. This is the analytics rule that is configured within Microsoft Sentinel. This is a scheduled analytics rule. This runs every 24 hours. I can adjust that schedule, how often that it runs. I can also adjust how far back it looks at data that we have stored or retained within Log Analytics Workspace. It looks for all of this information, that 4625 event ID. It looks for the username that attempted that brute force attack, and it also verifies that this is the on-prem security monitoring solution, so it looks for that. When this runs and it identifies that that situation absolutely occurred within my environment, it's going to generate what we call an incident. An incident is a bucket of artifact, a bucket of clues that analysts can use to determine exactly what happened, who did it, and such. I'm just going to jump into the full details just to show you how this works and what it collects for us. Currently, I have it collecting three things. I have it collecting the host or the computer or server that the brute force attack was enacted upon, the user account that was utilized to try to brute force attack or try to access that server, and the IP address that it comes from. That's critical, almost necessary information that any analyst needs. A lot of times in other tools, you're going to get information like this, but it's just going to be the host name, or it's just going to be the username, and that doesn't give you a whole heck of a lot to go on. This gives you all three of those specific artifacts or those components. As an analyst, that's huge. I know what they tried to attack, I know who tried to attack it, and I know what IP address they came from. Fortunately, this one, I know that it's going to be Nathan's on-prem environment. brute force attack could have come from an IP address that is external to the environment. That would be some important information that would be captured here as well. So you can kind of see that this is going to give the analyst something to look at. So this happened on-prem. Microsoft Sentinel saw it because that data was ingested, that alert was ingested into Microsoft Sentinel, and it generated an alert for us to show us what's going on our on-prem environment. So that's pretty awesome, and doing it in a more cost-effective way, right? The other piece of collateral that we have here that we're working on, and again, I'm going to filter by our nomenclature there. This is a workbook. I don't know what type of worker you are. I love to visualize things. That's how I work best, right? I absolutely love this query language, KQL, that we use for Microsoft Sentinel and Azure Monitor and stuff like that. But if I can visualize something in a way, I like to read comic books. I don't like to read long novels. I get bored and I fall asleep. If I can visualize something, I'm going to stay focused and attentive, and I'm going to know what's going on. So these workbooks are absolutely valuable for that perspective. These are Azure Monitor workbooks that work within Microsoft Sentinel. This one is very specific that we've written to encompass this on-prem solution through Scom, right? So I'm looking at a few things here. I can see the event IDs that have happened over the past 90 days. There's been more 4729s than anything, 4688s, new process spawn. There's been a few of those. This is over the past 90 days. There's the users that we've captured. Looks like there's some things that we haven't captured. We want to work on the parser just a little bit, but then also it looks like Nathan is probably the most prevalent user in his environment. I've also got the data captured a different way. Again, if you want to view those rows and columns of data, some people prefer that. As a data scientist, the different alerts, when they were generated, what time, what date, different ways of looking at this. This down at the bottom to me is going to be the really important piece to me. So working on some calculations. We talked about those costs earlier. Scom is not the only way that we can accomplish this, right? Sentinel has those capabilities built into it, but it can be more costly, right? Depending on what the customer wants to do. The Scom solution is a more cost-worthy solution than the way it is currently done. What we're working on now is that comparison calculation. Let's take the data from the cost from the old way we used to do it, and let's compare it to how we're doing it now and show that cost. Because from my perspective, I know from customers' perspective, I know from the product group's perspective, that's going to be one of the key differentiators between how you can do it versus how maybe potentially we should do it this way. So that's kind of in the build up and still working on that. That's the collateral that we have currently, but just to show you how easy it is and how intimately integrated that we can be with Microsoft Sentinel. It's not like we're doing something outside of the scope of what Microsoft Sentinel was intended for or can do. No, it's absolutely part and piece of that function, that security aspect that Microsoft Sentinel provides.
Awesome. Thank you, Rod. Thank you for the demo for both of y'all. If you would, go ahead and transition over to Bruce, and we'll wrap up and get over to some Q&A and everything. All right, I can see the slide deck. Excellent. We're good there. So a quick shout out, because I expect probably a lot of the people who are on today's call are Scom admins. So why should you care about this? So this is really good news for your Scom and your existing Scom environments. This is new capabilities really needed out there, and this really can make your Scom environment much more sticky with your security teams. Because if they're already using Sentinel and you can come to them and say, hey, I have on-prem data, security data that's relevant to you that I can provide through Scom, it's going to make that much more sticky for your organization. Now, this helps us to provide on-prem and hybrid configurations, and it, like mentioned multiple times, this can reduce the cost of the data ingestion associated with it, because we're using Scom to be able to provide the filtering, not only of what events and alert information we're going to provide, but also persist log type information. So if you're an existing Scom admin and you're doing anything related to Sentinel, I would definitely say check this out. So with that, if Bruce would move us to the next slide, we've got the download link associated with that. It's perfect. So the quick aka.ms link for Sentinel Hybrid. And then I think we're on to Bruce. Go for it, man.
Right, indeed. So thank you very much. Really cool to see how this solution works. I would thoroughly encourage everyone goes to this link and has a look for themselves. It makes sense for everyone, whether your focus is Sentinel or Scom. It's a really awesome and innovative solution, a good use of Nathan Gow's existing MP and of course Sentinel. So do go and check it out. Just a quick word from our sponsors, who are Cookdown, who is the company that I work for. We make code-free integrations for Scom to make it easy to integrate Scom with anything, essentially, using our Connection Center products. Using Connection Center, we can push Scom alerts to multiple places, starting with ITSM tools like ServiceNow and Sharewell, but also to other places like messaging tools like Slack and Teams, and ultimately anywhere you like via the power of webhook. So it's a very powerful solution, and all without writing any code. Also, relatively new addition to this suite of products, we have now got the ability to pull in alerts from anywhere, erase alerts in Scom using the mighty webhook. So that is Connection Center. We also have alert tuning products as well. Everything you need to know is at cookdown.com, where you can get a free trial and get a demo. That's one of our sponsors. The second sponsor is Squared Up, who are the not-so-secret source for Scom success. You'll probably know them already as dashboarding solution for Scom, but what they provide goes way deeper than just Scom. Rod, you said it yourself, a picture paints 1,000 words. Nothing can make this more true than Squared Up for multiple data sources from Scom to Azure through to other sources as well. Do go and check them out at squaredup.com. And finally, just to say that as of HackerScom, which we ran 2 weeks ago now, we have kicked off our annual Big Scom survey, which we are asking for you guys who use Scom day in, day out to tell us how you use Scom today and how that might change in the future, because that will affect, our plans potentially as Scom vendors. And because this is now the second year we've run this survey, we can see what's changed over the course of the year, what people are doing with it, what new tools people are using alongside of Scom, and more. So if you go to scomathon.com/survey, the survey will be there. I promise it's quick and easy to do, and we would really value your input into the Big Scom survey. We have these coffee break webinars, of course, monthly. We'll be taking a break for December, a much needed break, so we can bring you fresh content in January, where we will be looking at the results from the Big Scom survey. So that is it from us here at Scomathon. So before we say thank you, let's see if there are any questions. During the webinar, I've been keeping an eye on Slack. Nothing to note on Slack except Yannick is complimenting my Christmas tree. I'm just hoping that my sleepy cat stays asleep and doesn't want to leave the room before we're done, because that would be annoying. There are 2 questions in the chat. Will it be constantly updated is the first question, which I think is in relation to the security monitoring MP. So Nathan, I guess that's a question for you.
Yeah, I plan on continuing to update it. Again, it's definitely a time permitting kind of thing, to be very honest with you. So, and as legitimate requests come through that makes sense to add in there. So, as I come across something like, oh yeah, I should add this in there, sure, I'm going to put it in. If somebody makes a request like, hey, can you add this feature in there? Again, I'll put that in. So yeah, the Scom piece of this is definitely going to be updated, and I'll try to keep it on a once-a-year cadence. So I just for the record try to target right around early May to release it. It's just kind of how it fell into this year's came late because of the whole 2019 UR3 bug. But yeah, so that's my plan for that. I'm guessing Rod's got some on his too. So.
Rod, any comments from your side?
Yeah, so the whole idea here, at least from my perspective, I know, we want this to be sustainable and repeatable, right? Not just for us, but for customers. So as we go down this path of trying to make it a full Microsoft Sentinel solution, the idea is that it will just take advantage of what Microsoft Sentinel already has within the product itself. So we have when you stand up Microsoft Sentinel today, right, like a 31-day trial or whatever, there's, I don't know the number, somebody could probably, there's literally 250, 300, maybe more analytics rules that come part of Microsoft Sentinel that you can enable. Those analytics rules are, so you saw the one I did earlier, right, that I produced for this solution for brute force attack of system or potential brute force attack. We already have that, right, as an analytics rule within Microsoft Sentinel. Because this solution is sending its alerts to different tables than we're looking at currently, we have to create that custom analytics rule. In the future, the idea is we'll either include those data sources in the existing analytics rules, or maybe we'll just rewrite the analytics rules so they include, you know, those other two data sources or whatever. So the idea is not, we don't want to have to keep creating brand new analytics rules or brand new workbooks for this. These should be, again, customers should be able to stand this up, set it up, configure it, and just go and allow Sentinel to just do its job. From a security perspective, and talked about this early on about trying to consolidate our security tools and things like this, security should be an easy thing for customers. It shouldn't be some major task where you're all day tasked with helping users, supporting the business, sustaining the business, supporting the assets, whatever happens to be. Security should just be one of those things that's part of that whole operation. You know, if there's something severe or something critical that's happening in the environment, alert me. Don't make me go look for it. And that's the similar case here. As we have this integrated in Microsoft Sentinel, down the road, it will be deeply integrated, so we don't have to continue update analytics rules and things like that.
Makes sense. We get to see that come to life. Next question in the chat is, I have MS ATA. Where would Sentinel fit with ATA? I guess that's possibly between Cameron and Rod.
Well, so are you talking about the on-prem version of ATA? I can probably answer this actually.
Go for it.
So if we're talking on-prem, or are we talking Defender for Identity, which is the cloud version of it? The on-prem ATA can be configured to send to a syslog server. So if you're running the on-prem ATA, you can point it at the Scom server with the solution installed. All that data is going to get sent right in. Now, I will say personally, I would recommend, especially since ATA sits on domain controllers, I would personally send everything on a domain controller into the cloud regardless. You shouldn't have a whole lot of those in your environment, right? And so it might make more sense to just send, create the workspace on the agent and bypass this filtering solution just for your DCs. But if you can't do that, right, you can literally set. Scom's got the syslog capability in it on the on-prem version of ATA. You can forward it to Scom, and it's going to send the data into the cloud. If you're using Defender for Identity, which is the cloud version of that already integrates into Sentinel. So
it's a free integration, by the way. So
yeah. So I'm assuming you're talking about the on-prem version. So that's how I would handle that.
Makes sense. Perfect. And then the final question I've got at the moment is, can this be used without the cloud portion? I'm assuming that refers to the security monitoring MP.
So the old security monitoring MP is still out there. It's not at that Sentinel hybrid GitHub location. It's on my personal GitHub site where I posted it there, but that's not going anywhere. So if you're currently using the security monitoring solution, yeah, go ahead and do that. Just to reiterate, the Sentinel hybrid version that we're talking about is the existing security monitoring solution. It's just that we've adapted it for the cloud. Okay, so if you want the on-prem version, just go to the original link. It's up on my blog, and you can download it. You can still use it. It's free. So.
Sounds good. And I would also encourage you check out Nathan's Scomathon session, where you go quite deep into your solution and, of course, share where the download files live, which is always important. We'll make sure we send out links to that as well. Those are all the questions I've had via all the places you can add questions. So unless there are any other questions that come in before I end this webinar, all that's left to do is to say thank you. Thank you to everyone who attended today. Really appreciate your time. But of course, this wouldn't be possible without my guests. So thank you to Rod, Nathan, and Cameron. Thank you for joining and sharing your awesome solution.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
All right. So unless there are any final questions, thank you very much. Please do fill in the Big Scom survey, check out our sponsors, do check out the solution, and we will see you in the new year. So have a good Christmas, and until next year, thank you very much from all of us here at Team Scomathon. Thank you.